Most people who research a hike before they take it are looking for the same information: distance, elevation gain, difficulty rating, and whether the trailhead has parking. Almost none of them are looking for the information that matters most on the trails in this list. Which animals have attacked hikers here? What those attacks looked like? Why the terrain itself makes the encounter more dangerous than it would be anywhere else? And what the probability is that you will encounter something capable of ending your hike permanently before the trailhead is back in sight. These 12 trails are not simply difficult. They are locations where the specific combination of terrain, wildlife population, and visitor behavior has produced documented, verified animal attack incidents, in some cases repeatedly, in some cases recently, and in some cases in incidents that made national news and changed how rangers manage those specific stretches of trail. If you hike any of these, you should know exactly what is on them before your boots hit the ground. Number 1. Huckleberry Mountain Trail, Glacier National Park, Montana. Glacier National Park has the highest grizzly bear density of any location in the lower 48 United States, with wildlife biologists estimating roughly 1 bear per 3 square miles of park. On the Huckleberry Mountain Trail specifically, that density is not evenly distributed. It concentrates. Huckleberries ripen along this trail in late summer, producing one of the most reliable grizzly feeding sites in the park. Bears return to these slopes annually because the caloric return is extraordinary, and the pattern is consistent enough that the National Park Service closes the trail entirely during peak berry season, when grizzly activity reaches levels that rangers consider unmanageable from a safety standpoint. Outside those closures, encounters on this trail occur with a frequency unusual even for Glacier. In 2020, a trail runner collided with a grizzly that was feeding directly on the trail. The bear and the runner tumbled together off the path before the bear retreated. The runner survived. The incident illustrates the specific dynamic that makes Huckleberry Mountain more dangerous than most grizzly habitat. An animal that is feeding, concentrated on a calorie-dense food source, on a narrow trail with limited sightlines, surprised at close range by a human moving quietly and quickly. This is the scenario that produces the worst outcomes in grizzly encounters. This trail creates it with regularity. Number 2. Alum Cave Trail, Great Smoky Mountains National Park, Tennessee and North Carolina. The Great Smoky Mountains host the densest population of black bears in the eastern United States. Roughly 1,500 bears across approximately 800 square miles, producing one of the highest human bear encounter rates of any national park in the country. The Alum Cave Trail, one of the park's most popular routes to Mount LeConte, passes through prime black bear habitat in a park where multiple documented black bear attacks on hikers have occurred across the past 2 decades. In 2008, a 16-year-old girl was dragged from her sleeping bag at a backcountry campsite along this trail corridor by a black bear and was seriously injured before being rescued by other campers. In 2017, a black bear bit a visitor near a shelter on the LeConte Trail system. What makes the Smoky Mountains specifically dangerous for bear encounters is the combination of extraordinary bear density and extraordinarily high visitor numbers. The park receives more annual visitors than any other national park in the country. That combination produces regular habituation. Bears on heavily trafficked trails who have learned, through repeated encounters, that hikers frequently carry food, sometimes handle it carelessly, and rarely respond to the early warning behaviors that would deter a bear in less trafficked habitat. Number 3. Bright Angel Trail, Grand Canyon, Arizona. The Bright Angel Trail is one of the most heavily used hiking corridors in the American National Park system, and its primary wildlife danger is not the animal most people would guess. Rattlesnakes, specifically the Grand Canyon pink rattlesnake, a subspecies found nowhere else on Earth, inhabit the rocky terrain along the trail at multiple elevations. The species is cryptically colored to match the canyon's pink and tan limestone, produces excellent camouflage against the trail surface itself, and because of the trail's enormous visitor volume, has significant exposure to human foot traffic without the behavioral retreat response that rattlesnakes in less trafficked areas tend to develop. Multiple documented bites have occurred along the Bright Angel corridor, typically involving hikers stepping off the established trail, reaching into rocky areas along the path, or moving quickly in low-light conditions in early morning or evening, exactly when rattlesnakes are most active and least visible against the shadowed rock. The trail's descent profile adds a specific complication. Hikers most often encounter rattlesnakes on the way down, when attention is on footing and the visual focus is on the trail surface directly ahead rather than scanning wider. By the time a rattlesnake is within striking range, it has typically already been within visual detection range for several seconds, a window that tired, distracted hikers on a 9.5-mile descent frequently miss. Number 4. Glacier Gorge Trail, Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado. Rocky Mountain National Park hosts a moose population that has grown significantly over the past 3 decades, and the Glacier Gorge Trail passes through riparian habitat, stream corridors, willow thickets, and marshy meadows that moose specifically require and specifically defend. Moose are the most dangerous large ungulate in North America by per-encounter injury rate, and their specific danger on the Glacier Gorge Trail is a product of the terrain. The trail moves through dense willows where sightlines are short, animals are encountered at close range without warning, and retreat options are limited by the stream corridors on either side. Rocky Mountain National Park rangers have documented multiple moose charges on this trail, with several resulting in injuries serious enough to require evacuation. The encounters follow a consistent pattern. A hiker rounds a corner or crests a rise at short range from a moose that interprets the sudden appearance as a threat, and a charge follows with minimal warning time. A cow moose with a calf, the most dangerous moose encounter scenario, will charge without the preliminary posturing that bull moose typically display, meaning the first visible indicator of danger is often the charge itself. Number 5. Lost Mine Trail, Big Bend National Park, Texas. Big Bend National Park sits in the Chihuahuan Desert of West Texas and contains 2 overlapping wildlife hazards that the Lost Mine Trail concentrates in close proximity: mountain lions and western diamondback rattlesnakes, both in habitat optimized for the specific ambush behaviors that make each species dangerous. Big Bend has documented mountain lion activity across multiple trail corridors, with the Lost Mine Trail specifically flagged in ranger reports for lion sign, tracks, scrapes, and scat, found close to the trail surface during periods of active mountain lion movement. The terrain is exactly what mountain lion behavior research identifies as high-risk ambush territory: rocky outcroppings above the trail, dense desert scrub on both sides, and multiple elevated positions from which a lion can observe the trail below without being visible. Big Bend also has one of the highest rattlesnake encounter frequencies per visitor of any national park, with the rocky terrain and extreme heat pushing snakes onto trail surfaces during morning and evening hours when temperatures are manageable and hikers are most numerous. The specific danger of the Lost Mine Trail's rattlesnake population is the rock substrate. Western diamondbacks in this terrain rely on stillness and pattern matching rather than retreat, meaning they are regularly stepped on by hikers who did not see them. Number 6. Lonesome Lake Trail, Franconia Notch State Park, New Hampshire. The Lonesome Lake Trail and the Franconia Ridge Loop in New Hampshire's White Mountains are documented sites of repeated black bear encounters, in a region where the increasing habituation of black bears to hiking trail corridors has produced a specific problem: bears that approach hikers directly at close range without retreating. New Hampshire Fish and Game has documented multiple incidents in the Franconia Notch area involving bears that approached hikers on the trail, stood their ground when the hiker attempted to deter them, and in several cases made physical contact with hikers or their packs. These are not defensive encounters triggered by surprise. They are food-conditioned bears actively investigating hikers for accessible food, applying the same learning that drives urban coyote behavior to a trail system where the food reward has been reliable enough to sustain the behavior across multiple seasons. The specific danger of habituated black bears on narrow forested trails is the proximity at which contact occurs. A bear that approaches a hiker on a trail has closed the distance intentionally, at its own pace, and by the time the hiker identifies the behavior as a threat, the margin for effective deterrence is already narrow. Number 7. Chilkoot Trail, Klondike Gold Rush National Historical Park, Alaska. The Chilkoot Trail crosses some of the most active brown bear habitat in North America, and the specific conditions it creates for human bear encounters are unlike those on any other trail in this list. The trail follows a river corridor that functions as a salmon stream during spawning season, which coincides precisely with peak hiker traffic on the Chilkoot. Brown bears congregate along salmon streams to feed at a density found almost nowhere else in North America during this period, and the Chilkoot Trail moves directly through that feeding habitat, in terrain where the dense riverbank vegetation limits visibility to a few meters in every direction. A bear feeding on salmon along a narrow, brushy river corridor, surprised by a hiker at close range in an environment where it cannot easily retreat without abandoning its food source, is one of the highest risk encounter scenarios in North American wildlife management. The Chilkoot Trail produces that scenario repeatedly, during every hiking season that overlaps with the salmon run. Number 8. Highline Trail, Glacier National Park, Montana. The Highline Trail is Glacier National Park's most exposed high-altitude corridor, running along the Garden Wall, a narrow ridgeline with dramatic drop-offs on both sides, through terrain that concentrates grizzly bears in exactly the kind of open, high-meadow environment where encounters happen at long range and where retreat options are constrained by the ridge's geometry. Unlike the Huckleberry Mountain Trail, where encounters typically occur in dense vegetation at short range, the Highline Trail produces encounters at medium range in open terrain, a scenario that is not necessarily safer. A grizzly spotted at 100 meters on a narrow ridge with no tree cover and limited lateral escape options requires a specific, calm response that inexperienced hikers frequently do not execute correctly. Glacier National Park's grizzly attack record includes multiple incidents on and near the Highline Trail, several of which involved groups of hikers who encountered bears in the high meadows and did not manage the encounter correctly before the bear closed distance. The trail's extraordinary scenery draws thousands of visitors who are focused on the landscape rather than on the terrain around them, and the combination of narrow path, exposed ridge, and dense grizzly population makes sustained wildlife awareness difficult to maintain over the trail's full 11.8-mile length. Number 9. Barton Creek Greenbelt, Austin, Texas. The Barton Creek Greenbelt is not a remote wilderness trail. It runs through Austin, Texas, a major city of over 1 million people, and is used by thousands of local hikers, runners, and cyclists every week. It is also documented rattlesnake habitat, with western cottonmouth and Texas coral snake sightings, in addition to multiple rattlesnake species along the creek corridor, in a trail system where the proximity of dense urban development to riparian habitat has created a specific problem: snakes that cannot retreat from high human traffic because the surrounding terrain offers no refuge, encountered by hikers who are not in a mental frame of wildlife vigilance because they are in a city park. Austin Emergency Services respond to venomous snake bites from the Barton Creek corridor multiple times per year. The documented incidents consistently involve hikers who stepped off the main trail or reached into rocky areas adjacent to the creek without checking the surface first, behavior that is standard in an urban park context and almost universally unsafe in actual snake habitat. Number 10. Appalachian Trail, Pennsylvania Section. Pennsylvania's section of the Appalachian Trail passes through dense eastern woodland that hosts one of the most significant concentrations of timber rattlesnakes in the northeastern United States. The species' preference for rocky outcroppings, south-facing ledges, and forest edges along the ridgelines exactly describes the terrain the Pennsylvania AT traverses across its 229-mile state section. Trail hikers on the Pennsylvania AT report timber rattlesnake encounters regularly enough that it has become a documented feature of the trail's character. Databases maintained by long-distance hiker communities show rattlesnake sightings across multiple Pennsylvania sections every hiking season. The specific risk of the timber rattlesnake on this trail is the combination of cryptic coloring that makes visual detection difficult, a documented tendency to hold position rather than retreat, and a venom profile that combines hemotoxic and neurotoxic components in a dual-action envenomation more complicated to treat than standard rattlesnake bites. Number 11. Everglades Anhinga Trail, Everglades National Park, Florida. The Anhinga Trail is one of the most accessible wildlife viewing trails in the American National Park system. A short, flat, paved loop through sawgrass marsh that places hikers within meters of alligators, wading birds, and cottonmouth snakes on essentially every visit. The specific danger of the Anhinga Trail is that accessibility. It draws visitors who are not experienced hikers, who are focused on wildlife photography, and who consistently underestimate the proximity and speed of the alligators they are photographing. American alligators along the Anhinga Trail have habituated to human presence sufficiently that they no longer retreat when hikers approach, a situation the park manages with signage and ranger presence but cannot fully control across the trail's entire length during peak visitor hours. Documented alligator charges and near attacks along the Anhinga Trail corridor have involved visitors who approached alligators for photographs from distances that rangers consider unsafe, and in several cases, visitors who place themselves between an alligator and the water, the one escape route the animal will use at any cost if it decides to move toward cover. Number 12. Denali Park Road Corridor, Denali National Park, Alaska. The backcountry zones accessible from the Denali Park Road Corridor are the only location in this list where 3 large predators capable of killing a human, grizzly bear, wolf, and moose, coexist in the same accessible hiking terrain with essentially no maintained trail infrastructure. There are no maintained hiking trails in most of Denali's backcountry. Hikers navigate open tundra and river corridors by compass, cross rivers without bridges, and travel through terrain where grizzly bears are encountered at any time of year, where wolfpack territories overlap with the most commonly hiked corridors, and where moose in rutting season are among the most dangerous large animals in North America. In 2012, a 49-year-old hiker was killed by a brown bear in Denali's backcountry in a documented predatory attack. The bear tracked the victim, returned to the site after the initial encounter, and consumed part of the body before rangers were able to respond. The investigation classified it as a predatory attack, distinguishing it from the defensive encounters that account for most bear fatalities in other parks. Denali's backcountry receives thousands of permit holders annually. The absence of maintained trail infrastructure means there is no trail designed to reduce blind corner encounters, no established human scent corridor to pre-warn wildlife, and no evacuation route that doesn't require hours of travel through the same terrain where the incident occurred. Every trail on this list is legally open to hikers. None of them require special training or permits beyond what their managing agencies request. You can be standing on any of them within a planning horizon most people would consider ordinary. What separates the hikers who come back from the ones who don't is almost never physical fitness and almost never experience level. It is preparation, specific, trail-targeted knowledge of what animals are present, what behavior they display before an attack, and what the correct response is for the specific species in the specific terrain you are moving through. The animals on these trails are not lying in wait for you. They are living in habitat that your trail happens to cross. The overlap is where the danger lives, not in malice, but in the simple physical fact of 2 species occupying the same narrow strip of ground at the same moment. Know what you're walking into, every time.